if you've ever wondered, this is about take 297 trying to get this little bit of video footage shot. But I think I've got my mic set up right this time. Let's go to the practice footage right here. And I think it'll help you, it'll be interesting for you to see sort of my thought process on how I settled or how I found these fish. And then we'll jump right over to the tournament footage. So let's go practicing right here, guys. Stick around. I've got a pair of eagles just over here. That's who you can hear yakking. I thought we could maybe talk a little bit about our practice day as we go. So I have come up the lake. I am between the 147 and the 103 bridge, about midway. And you know, as you guys saw in the Sweet 16, excuse me, in the rattle trap tournament last weekend, I stayed down south and caught a bunch of little knotheads. I've come up here with the full knowledge that I want to get a lot, generally fewer bites up here, but hoping to get some better bites. The water up here is 54.5 this morning. It was a cold night last night. It got down in the 30s. It's still probably only 43, 44 degrees now. I just made a pass down a row of cypress bushes and buckbrush, mostly cypress bushes, and did not have a bite. And I flipped a few of them out on the point. And I picked up a spinnerbait, threw a spinnerbait a little bit, and then I picked up a swim jig, threw a swim jig a little bit. Everything would tell me, from everything I know of doing this for, gosh, since 1977, that these fish should be on the points. But, and that's mostly what I'm gonna do today. But I've worked my way all the way to the back of a drain back here. And there's actually, so remember, a drain is basically a kind of a ditch. There's a little bit of depth change. You really can't see the way I've got the camera set up. There's a little bit of depth change down the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work these bushes right up against this deeper edge, with the thought that if these fish have been back here, and the fish are certainly thinking about spawning. Certainly, as a matter of fact, I've talked to some guys this week that have caught some fish that they said looked like they had already spawned out. So if those fish have moved up, they should be right here on this first break. So I'm gonna fish through this stuff. I won't spend much time back here because I think even if I do get bit, they're probably not gonna be real big ones. But I am gonna make a pass back here. And even though it's Friday practice day before tournament on Saturday, the BFL's tomorrow, if I get bit, I'm gonna swing on the first few. One of them's an 8-pounder, then I swing on an 8-pounder. So I'm not a big fan of swinging on fish in practice. I usually will let them, just shake them off, but I want to get a sense of what my bites are up here before I commit to run up here, because it's going to be in any kind of rough water at all. Well, even in dead smooth water, it's a half-hour boat ride, or actually a little more than that up here. So I'm gonna poke around back here, and I just rigged a black blue beaver with a 1/2 ounce sinker, that's a 3 Superline EWG hook. That's my hook of choice. Magnum Bass Rod 3, and a pretty quick reel here. This is a 7.5-to-1, so I can recover that line real fast and make that next flip. So let's poke around in here and see if we can't get bit flipping this beaver. Bite. That didn't take very long. I will admit I might have been a little surprised I got bit that fast. So, but that was a bite. So let's get down there and lunch on my beaver. Hey, nice beaver. Thanks, I just had it stuffed. That would be a Naked Gun quote for any of you that are old enough to remember the movie Naked Gun, with the incredibly funny Leslie Nielsen. Golly, that guy was funny. Little camo trick. You get that line when that braid starts washing out a little bit. You can take just a big black Sharpie and basically doing exactly what camo does. And if you remember the line, I don't know if they still make it or not, but it's called Triple Fish. You know, my old buddy Jim Tutt loved him some Triple Fish. You can do that and it takes away, well, it does exactly what camouflage does, right? See how it breaks it up? Works really well. I'll tell you, the line needs to be dry and you got to reapply it every few hours, but overall, works really well. Well, I said I'd walk you through practice. It's 10:21 and I have flipped several hundred cypress trees up here and have not had a bite in them. The only bite I've had was a fish. I think I probably got on film where I swung on it. You know, it could have been a 10-incher, it could have been a 10-pounder. It was in the back of a drain like this one. I've spent all my time out sort of on the main lake, little fingers sticking out on the main lake, thinking that with the water falling, with them pulling the water, that's where those fish would be. It has not happened. The water up here looks better than I thought it would, but it's also colder than I thought it would be. It's 53, 54 right here. So at this point, I'm gonna spend just a little bit more time in here and I'm gonna start working my way back south. The only reason I would make this long a run in the tournament is, truthfully, if it was easy. If I felt like I could come up here and just really slam on them or get a ton of bites and try to work through them and catch a few big ones. But there's no sense in coming this far up here for this few of bites. So I'm gonna keep poking around up here for just a little bit longer, but by lunchtime I'm gonna be headed back south. I get a lot of questions from guys about what equipment I use and why. And so this is a rod, and I'll tell you one note about Lou's rods. Now, granted, at Rayburn and Toledo, we probably fish on average for a bigger bite than a lot of places in the country. But my experience is Lou's rods are a little lighter action for me than what I like throwing. So for example, what they call their spinnerbait rod for me is a little bit light. I like a little heavier rod. This rod right here is a Magnum hammer. It is a LMH, it's a 7.3, it's called a medium heavy action with a fast tip on it. What I like about it are two things. Number one, and I talked about this in my Toledo video, at 7.3, that's about the right distance for me to be able to pitch those spinnerbaits underhanded. It's got a little bit shorter handle on it, and it's got plenty of backbone when I get one up in the bad stuff to pull it out. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm up here, it's some pretty nasty stuff, and I'm only throwing 15-pound cigar. That won't happen tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll either be throwing 17, assuming I'm coming up here, 17 or 20, or I might even jump up to braid. But that is an ideal, to me, spinnerbait rod for close quarters. Not out in the open water, but in close quarters where I gotta make these little short, underhanded pitches and hit holes. That's an ideal rod to do that. One of the things in talking to, you know, it's funny, I fish with the same guy basically for the last 10 years, and quite honestly, standing on the front deck with him, we fish very similar, that being Dickie Newberry. But when I have co-anglers in the boat, I don't pay a lot of attention, not because I'm disinterested, but because I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing. And I was talking to Brian Branham, who you've heard me talk about quite a bit. He's a guide here on Rayburn, a good guy. Matter of fact, he had another guy this week, I'll put his name in right here, that had his personal best down here this week. Came down from Arkansas or Missouri, won, but they were flipping. And Brian made a comment to me that he gets a lot of guys in the boat who will flip, and what they'll do is they'll do this. They'll flip in there and they'll let that line spool off their reel. Well, that didn't fall very far, but you get my point. So they'll flip in there and let that line spool off their reel. And he said all of these deep flipping bites he's getting, it's really important for that line for that bait to fall on free line, or on basically with no tension against it. And so we learned to do that, or I learned to do that grass fishing. So when I'd grass fish, I'd flip in there and I'll throw that line, and that line will ball up on top of the water. And what happens if you'll take a beaver or any kind of, well, especially a beaver or a tube, and you'll flip them in your swimming pool, if you let them go down on free line, what you'll see is they meander. A lot of times they'll make sort of a circle. Whereas if you let them fall on the tension of your spool, they kind of fall straight down. It's just not as natural or as crazy looking a presentation. And he said that all those guys, when they get in the boat, if they're not big flippers, especially in this deep water flipping we're doing right now, he said they'll try to do it on their spool and they won't get bit. And until he can get them to stop doing that and throw some line to that lure and make it really fall on a free spool, they don't get nearly as many bites. He said, but once they get that dialed in, their bite totals go through the roof. So just remember that when you're flipping, throw that line in there. That's why you see me throw that line over the top. Throw that line in there, it'll pile up in there, and that bait will fall much freer, and you'll get more bites doing that. Hopefully like the one I'm gonna show you right here. Okay, I'm gonna cut away, but I'm gonna have one on when I come back. Well, 12-12, and there's a technical fishing term for what I just experienced that I'm not gonna use. Well, let's just say it's not good. You know, I like fishing away from the crowd, but I've seen one other guy up here today, and a lot of these guys have fished most of the week, and if they're not still up here poking around, that probably tells me these fish just are not on, and I do not understand it. It is beautiful. I'd love to see 2 or 3 more degrees of water temperature, but it looks perfect. The water's got great clarity. It's what I would call spinnerbait water. You can see a spinnerbait foot and a half, and I'm going that way. Solid keeper. That's one of those bites where you go crap, because that is so random. It's not on a point. It's so random. That's so frustrating. It does not help me at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, tomorrow I'll probably take that fish to get the day going, but that does not help me at all figuring out what I want to do. By the way, if you've never seen that, that's that Yamamoto creature bait. I'll show it to you right here real close. I apologize, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a creature bait. And the cool thing about it, it's got all kind of flapper. It reminds me of the Men in Black when he says put up all your hands and all your flappers or whatever. But that is a 5/0 EWG hook, a super line hook. And yes, I know it's a little nasty looking rusty hook, but the thing about that bait is you can take it and you can bury that hook in it. And of course, being a Yamamoto plastic, it's got so much salt in it that it just disintegrates on a bite. So you seldom, if ever, miss a fish. That's a favorite of mine flipping this time of year, trying to get a little bigger bite, which we didn't just get, obviously. That's about a 5-pounder, maybe between 4 and 6 pounds. And that fish broke me off. I got him pulled out of there. Now I'm real curious how old that breed is. Don't see that happen very often. But that's the kind of bites we need right there. Boy, I'd be sick if that happened tomorrow. Ooh, I'd be sick. By the way, I'm gonna chalk that lost fish off. I had just shown y'all. I put too small a sinker on there. I had just shown y'all that bait, and I don't think you'll be able to see it in the footage, but it had been tied on for a while, and I think there was actually some rust on the eye. And when I looked at it, it had broke right at. It looked like literally in the knot, which this stuff doesn't do unless somebody leaves some rust in the spot. So my bad. Wouldn't happen on tournament day. All right, so practice is about to get pretty boring. That was my third bite there, and it's probably 70 yards or a little bit less of bushes. So the hook's coming off. I'm just going to put a screw lock on there. If you've never seen that, it's just what I call a centerline screw lock. That last fish bit, and I don't think it was a real big fish, but it was going out the backside of the bush, and I thought, well, I want to see what it is. And I can't tell you why I don't think it was a big fish. It's just sometimes you get a sense to it. So I swung on it. I lost another $6 sinker, but I also probably lost a bite that I might have could have got tomorrow had I not swung on it, had I shook it off. So with this, even if I don't get them shook off, all they're gonna do is take my bait away from me. So we're gonna do this for a little bit. That was another bite right there, by the way. There's one got it off that tree. That fish is on that sweetwood tree. Fish might hang around tomorrow. We can catch him. That's 2 bites right there in about 15 feet. It's good stuff. So really late in the day here, I'm gonna try to shoot this without making a mess. I have pushed my way back into the bushes and picked up a spinnerbait and caught a little knot head and picked up a sinkhole on a really light weight. Called a chunk. That fish will weigh 3 pounds. Fish will weigh, I think he'll weigh 3 pounds. Throwing a Senko with a tiny little weight on it. Just pitching around these sweet gum trees back here. Golly. He was not going anywhere. I don't want to bend my hook. Chunk, man, just as chubby, fired up. Had to pull him over a lay down. That was fun. So I caught the 3-pounder on the Senko back here, went around the tree. I'm not a boat length from where I was, and I caught another one about 2 pounds, again on that little weightless Senko. So the card on that camera was full, so I got another camera out. Let's see if we can get another bite or two back here just for grade.